Give us ears to hear, O God, now as we turn our attention to these time-honored words. Amen. A reading from Matthew 5, verses 17 to 20, as we again pick up, working our way through the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus, of course, is speaking. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. This is the gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Never? Really? If that be the case, I suggest that we close up our Bibles. I'm going to take off this stove, turn out the lights, exit calmly, lock the church up tight, and get on with the rest of our lives. Perhaps the town can find some other use for this nice facility. We haven't got a chance to enter the kingdom if we take Jesus' words here at face value. The early hearers of these words might have thought the same thing. How can we out-righteous the righteous? We can't live up, so we might as well just give up. Let's get on to the things we know we can do. Those two sets of fishermen brothers, they can always go back to their boats. I can always go back to my ukulele. Doesn't pay much, though. If we will never enter the kingdom of heaven, we've all got many other things we can do with our time, our talent, and our treasures. Of course, we're not going to do that. Of course, I wouldn't advocate that, especially with us being out there online this morning. When Pastor Jeff returns, he will not find the church all locked up tight and a for sale sign on it, no one around. But you have to admit, Jesus' words here are rather eye-opening and challenging at the least. How do we out-righteous the righteous? In Jesus' day, the scribes and the Pharisees, a catch-all term for the religious leaders, they were the righteous of the day. They were the Olympians of spirituality. They were the social influencers. They were the educated. They were the Red Ricks and Pastor Jeffs and Chaplain Mindy's of the day. They knew how to do things decently and in order. They knew the scriptures backwards and forwards and took them seriously. They knew how to pray. They were at synagogue whenever the doors were open. They were generous givers to the temple treasury. They would have been movers and shakers in their communities. You'd have been thrilled to have your daughter bring one of them home for dinner, and better yet, that she marry one of them. You know she'd be taken care of. Am I going to line up on the scrimmage line across from Tom Brady? Am I going to take to the tennis court against Roger Federer? Am I going to be in a fiddling contest with violin virtuoso Itzhak Perlman? I don't think so. When asked what they wanted to be when they grew up, many young Jewish boys would point to the scribes and Pharisees. The leaders, the models, the emulated, those who made a difference. An exclusive club that so many wanted to join, but there were only so many spots. And that clubbiness, I think, is what draws this response from Jesus. The idea that faith was a club, that spirituality or righteousness was a club reserved for only the elites, for the Holy of Holies. That great mass of religious seekers or practitioners, folks like me and you, just trying to do our best with God and best for God, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, well, we need not apply. Our applications wouldn't make it through the first review. Throughout his ministry, Jesus had his harshest words, not for the sinners, but for the righteous, for the religious leaders who seemed to have it all together at the same time, would push aside those who they felt did not live up to their particular kinds of standards. Throughout his ministry, Jesus burst the kinds of barriers that religion often creates between people and between people and God. Jesus allowed anyone to sit at his table. He didn't expect people to have their act together before he would give them the time of day. He didn't treat women and children as second class. He gladly hung out with those whom the religious dismissed, using that catch-all phrase, tax collectors and sinners. You might remember they dubbed him a glutton and a winebibber. He touched the hand of a leper, making himself religiously unclean. He healed on the Sabbath. He told that great story about that prodigal son who wandered off and came back, and his father welcomed him and said, "Let's have a party. No consequences, no repercussions." And he made a despised Samaritan the hero in another story. Jesus was amazingly universal in holding out the availability of the divine welcome to anyone and everyone. I have this silly picture of Jesus having Gumby arms. You remember that stretch character Gumby? He could stretch out his arms seemingly forever. Well, Jesus had arms long enough to stretch out and encompass anyone who wanted that embrace. In contrast to so many others whose arms were so atrophied they could barely put them around themselves. Jesus, God box, had room for everyone, not just a select few. If Jesus' ministry had any theme, it was that God was and is bigger, better, more loving, more forgiving, more compassionate, and more available than we could ever possibly imagine. And that kind of expansiveness undercuts those who claim to be gatekeepers, who can't claim to be able to decide who's in and out, then and now. And we've got people like that today. In the words of a well-known musical theologian, Jesus would rather laugh with the sinners than cry with the saints, because sinners are much more fun. Jesus might not have put it that way. And if you listen to the lyrics that Billy Joel is singing, you know what he's really singing about. But it captures the generous spirit Jesus embodied far more than just about any of his contemporaries. It's so true that often those who are proclaiming a big God get shot down. They get ostracized. They get crucified literally or figuratively by those who are confined by a teeny tiny God. A small God makes for small people. We all know a few people like that. We all know a few people who have a big God. I want to be more like one of those. I think that's what we need to hear behind Jesus' rather audacious claim that unless our righteousness exceeds that of the scribes, well, we don't have a prayer of getting into the kingdom. He's not holding up a standard that's even higher than the Pharisees, that only a select few could qualify for. No, I think he's offering a different kind of yardstick, a different kind of measure by which to evaluate one's status with God, if there even needs to be such a yardstick. We need to hear these surprising words against the backdrop of Jesus' own practice of radical welcome, as well as his constant critique of a spirituality that based more on outward practice and performance than it was a matter of the heart or the soul. The more secure we are in God, the more we know we are infinitely loved by God and accepted just for who we are, the less we ever need to act out, to play to crowds, to put on airs for others, or even for ourselves. Less need to try to be holier than thou. Like so many of the prophets who came before him, Jesus came to restore spirituality as primarily a matter of the heart. He surely believed that a heart in the right place was going to produce the right kind of fruit. A life pleasing to God, a life compassionate, generous, and kind to others. What you could call righteousness. So, how do we outrighteous the righteous? We can't. If we're going to play that game, we're going to lose every time. We cannot out-Pharisee the Pharisees. I hope those who originally heard these words stuck around rather than saying, this guy is nuts, and went off. It might be another way. The next section of the Sermon on the Mount might give us some clues as to what Jesus has in mind. So, stay tuned. Thanks be to God. Amen. Our next hymn, and you can remain seated for it, is Be Still and Know.